welcome to Cosmic Connections. I'm Starling Brader here with Christopher Pridham. Today we're going to deviate a little bit from vibrational astrology, although everything is intertwined. We're going to talk about Hermeticism and astrological magic. I'm going to ask Christopher some questions and we're going to go from there. So Christopher, how's things going today? Are you interested in this conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, things are good. Life keeps moving forward. So,
How's that beautiful grandbaby of yours?
she's amazing. She's amazing. So she got a couple shots today, which I was sad to hear. Because yeah, but no, she's growing, getting bigger, coming into her own. You watch the energy dynamics. You look at the chart. You see how it's. You're always interested how they're expressing it, but she's just coming into her body now. Like she's, the being. Here you have a being that is that being, but they've been embodied, and it's like, okay, they've got a brain that they're learning how to use. All right. They're having to learn how to use that. They're having to learn how to use their body. They're having to learn how to use the physicality. And that's not an easy process. So it's like you have this, in a sense, an ancient soul that is embodied in this little being, and it's trying to figure out how to process everything. So it's an overload. That's an overload. You wonder why a baby sleeps so much. It's exhausting because you're
Yeah.
having to learn everything from scratch, you know? So, and
Yeah.
they're learning so much, like how to move their arms, how to move their hands, how to move their feet, how to do everything. They're having to learn everything. So, yeah, it's interesting.
It's a different view when you're the parent and the grandparents. It's interesting and an awesome perspective. So,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
So we're going to talk about Hermeticism. I know that we've been talking a little before we started, but I know that you have worked and understand the core principles of Hermeticism. Can you quickly kind of like go over them to share them with us to kind of lay the groundwork?
Yeah. So, well, Hermeticism, has basically 7 principles is what you're dealing with. And
Mm-hmm.
you've got like the first principle of mentalism, all the all is mind and the universe is mental. That's out of the Kabbalion. Oh, and what you're really dealing with there is the idea of thought, the idea of mind. So, like in the Bible, it would say, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." So it deals from a sort of mental state that there is thought, that there is consciousness, that exists is really what's there. Then you go to the principle of correspondence. That's the second one. As above, so below. And it's the idea that everything is working in a certain harmony, that there's reflections, that there is, what do we call it? Oh my goodness, why am I spacing the word now? It's the repeating of the pattern. It repeats and it
Mm-hmm.
repeats and repeats. Okay, so you have
The
repeating
fractal,
patterns. What's that? Fractal.
like the
Yes.
fractal. Yeah.
Yes, it's a fractal. So the principle of correspondence is the concept of a fractal, that everything
Mm-hmm.
moves in that way. Then, of course, our favorite, the third principle, the principle of vibration. Okay, so everything moves, and that's a principle that is very challenging for a lot of people and for us as human beings, because we like stability. We like things to not necessarily move all the time, and yet everything moves. Everything moves. Even that thing you think, oh, that'll never move, it'll move. And so that means that we're in a world, because we're in an evolving world, we're in a world of constant change, you know.
Yeah.
Then you have the principle of polarity. Okay. And we see this again a lot within the concept of astrology, where if you have Gemini, you have Sagittarius. If you have
Right.
Scorpio, you have Taurus. If you have Pisces, you have Virgo. With the idea here, Pisces being that water sign, Virgo being that earth sign, Virgo being that doing, and Pisces being the being, kind of like that polarity. They work on a pole, that has a similar energy, but they manifest in different ways. You can also take the polarity of the first 6 signs and the second 6 signs of the individual and the group. So you take that. Again,
Yeah.
how things work as an individual connecting in Gemini, how the corporate kind of dynamic plays out in Sagittarius. The next you have the principle of rhythm. Okay. So that there's a rhythm, that there's a pattern. All these things kind of go towards the concept of patterns, but that there's a rhythm, there's a tidal kind of aspect to things, is what you have. Okay. So if it flows out, that what's coming, you're going to have a flow in. Okay. That's
Right.
out and in, out and in. That's the thing. This is what everybody who works in the stock market wants to always learn. Which way is it flowing? Is the tide going out or is it coming in? You know, to be able
Right.
to read the tides, to be able to read the tides of the stock market, yeah, you're going to be great. You're going to do well. And to be able to read the tides of your life, to be able to read the tides of the world, this is the whole thing. Now, this is the next principle, which is principle 6, is the principle of cause and effect, which I love. This is the whole concept of you reap what you sow. All right. And it is these are absolute laws, is what I would like to say on these hermetic principles. you cannot do good in this world and not have good come back. That's impossible. And you cannot do bad in this world and not have bad come back. You cause and effect. Don't think that, oh, I got away with that. Never happens. Or
Right.
that was unnoticed. I don't get anything. Yes, you will. You put good out in the world, good is guaranteed to come back. You put evil out in the world, evil is guaranteed to come back. It's the way it is. That's the 6th principle. And the 7th principle is that of gender. That one might be a little controversial for this day and age, but the 7th and final principle is that everything is gendered. It is either masculine or feminine. So everything works off these flows, kind of that movement, which is so, and where you see this principle, like all of really these principles ultimately come in the creation story, where it says that God breathed into Adam the breath of life and man became a living being. What does that mean? What is breath? There is the outward and the inward. It is like we do this constantly. We move into that principle. All right. So it's a consistent thing. And if we don't do it, we will die. We have to do it. Our heart beats, boom, 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 boom. The breath, the eye blinks. All these kind of things have a correspondence. And these are the 7 principles of Hermeticism. And again, it's not something, it's like, oh, this is going to be really hard, these concepts. No, they're actually not. They're very natural.
Yeah. And I like how you said that they're natural laws, so to speak. You know,
Yes,
I don't know if
absolutely.
that's exactly. Yeah, because it is how we flow in the universe, and to my awareness at least. You know, we give out and we get back. The one thing that I wonder about with, I think it was 6, is that when you put good things out, good things come back to you. But how do you think about, well, something tragic happens to a young body that hasn't had time to do something, in the world.
You're thinking of a thing in time and space. So what do you mean that person didn't do anything?
Oh, that's true. So maybe it was a past lifetime or whatever happens to be. Interesting. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Because I've always had that wonder in my brain. What happens to the baby that was born not well, whatever,
Yeah. Well, they asked that question in the Bible. Was this man born blind because of something he did or something his parents did?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a question of why does this happen? And you don't always know all the sort of ramifications because you don't know the end. Okay. So you don't know the end of the story. You're seeing a little part of the story, and you see let's say you see a tragedy happen. Well, you don't know how what it's going to play out. You don't know how that's going to play out. Okay. Um, and when you see a tragedy of a death, well, what was that person here to learn? Did they already learn it? And now they're ready to go on to the next one, to the next like task or the next life.
Or
Okay.
was
So
it a contract with the parents to learn something? And I mean, maybe both goes
absolutely,
both ways,
absolutely.
right?
You don't know. But
Yeah, that makes
like
sense.
you come to a point of trusting the flow. You
Yeah.
trust the flow. So here, like I'm living on the waters at the Pottsburg Creek, and it's tidal, okay, and the water will flow out to be very. Now, do I trust that it's going to come back? Yep, I try.
Yeah.
And does it? Yep, it has so far. Okay, it goes out, it comes back. It goes out, and it comes back. It's like okay. So when you see an event, when you see with anything, is that what you're looking at? Is that a going out or is that a coming back? What is that? What is happening? So
Yeah,
that's how I
so
see
there,
it.
and it goes back to also as the as above, so below. It's not just as above in the cosmos; it's everywhere as without. Within,
Everything
it's
is
all
involved
connected.
in this breath. Yes.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that is a really great way to put it, and I think it's like gives simplicity to something that is obviously not simple. But thank you for sharing that. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. Now that we talked about Hermeticism, I'm curious about a lot of things, but I'm curious about astrological magic and what that is. So like I want to, and then I want to bring them both together. So astrological magic, I know it's timing of things, and anytime we look at a chart, we're sort of doing an astrological magic, but there is a method to creating things such as talismans with astrological magic. But how does that intertwine with Hermeticism?
Okay. Well, again, as above, so below. You're looking at the idea as we look to the sky, we see the movement of the stars, we see the movement of the planets, we see the movement. Well, we have is that affecting what's happening on Earth? Okay. So we see movement as above, so below. So that means things are moving here. Do you notice it? Do you see it? Can you recognize it? Can you engage it? Okay. There is acknowledgement of things. All right. There are things that we can do consciously, or what we do is we will do it unconsciously. So, for
Yeah.
example, you can take the idea of you have a river and you have a mountain river and it's going down. Now, you can jump into that river and you are going to be tossing and turning and you're going to be taken down that river. Or you can choose to get into a boat and go down it. All right. No matter what, you get in that river, you're going down. Okay.
Yeah. You're
It's
not going
just
up.
how you are not going up. You're going to go down. That thing is moving and it's moving fast. Okay. So am I just going to be one who jumps in and then tossed all over the place and don't know what the hell's going on, and I'm just flowing through life as it is without any conscious effort to work with it at all? Or am I going to say, I'm going to get a little kayak here and I'm going to make my way down there and do it a little more consciously? I'm still going to go down, but I'm going to do it where I have the element that I can control, I get to control. Okay? The element I get to control. I cannot go the other way, but I have a little control of whether I'm going to go left or right or keep, like, I want to stay upright. I tend to want to stay upright. Okay? Okay. So that's a little bit of kind of the concept of what, when you're dealing with astral magic, that you're doing. You're doing things consciously. All right. And are you changing everything? No, you can't change everything, but you can affect what you can affect. All
Right.
right. You don't
Right.
have to be going down under the water the whole time. All right. You can sit up. You have the ability to do that. All right. So that's what you're doing. And what are you doing? In astral magic, you're developing a relationship with the messengers, or the angels, we could say, of the planets. All right, so we can develop a relationship with the angels of the planets. Now, again, we see this in the Bible a lot, where they were developing relationships with angels. And again, simply all an angel means, the word angel is messenger of God. That's it. All right. And as we know, the planets were referred to as the gods. All right. That's the
Yeah, they
gods
have
of
the god
heaven.
names. Hmm.
Okay. And then there's the God of gods, which is what in Christianity we refer to as Father God, the God of gods.
Yeah.
Okay. So you sometimes have to get your, like, okay, what are they actually talking about here? Are they talking about the heavenly gods? Okay. Or are they talking about the unseen God? And these are different concepts. But what we're dealing with is the heavenly gods. And so you want to develop a relationship with the angels of Mercury, or the angels of Jupiter, or whatnot. And you can take their day. Okay, so today is Monday, so it's the moon's day. All right. And if I want to develop a relationship with the moon, I would start at the moon's hour, which is typically at sunrise at 6 something, and there's an hour there. And you can go
Hmm.
to it, you can find it online, where you can actually do the charting, and it will start, and you can um, basically begin to talk to um, the moon and the messengers of the moon, and do that,
Hmm.
and develop a relationship in that way, and even create what's called a talisman. You could do that as well if that's what you intend. But typically within Hermeticism, what you're doing is you're beginning to develop a relationship, in a sense, with the day. I mean, it's like we have 7 days out of the week for the 7 visible planets. These are not accidents. And then we roll through these. We roll through the 7, then we roll through the 7 again, and then we roll through the 7 again, and then again, and then we do another month and we roll through the 7. So it's like, how do I want to develop a relationship with the moon? And what does that look like? What is a relationship with the moon? What does the moon do?
The moon affects the moods, the water on Earth,
Yeah. But just in
emotions, bring the
general, just
past
the
into the
pure moon, what
present.
does it do?
It reflects the light of the
It
sun
reflects the sun. Yes.
orbiting the Earth. Yeah.
When we're in darkness, it reflects the light of the sun. That's what it does. So it's reflecting something. All right. It's not generating it, it's reflecting it. And
Right.
so would a Monday be a good day for reflection?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point when you're looking at
Okay.
from that perspective. Yeah.
So it's like Monday is a day of reflecting. All right. Now, so Sunday, which Sunday precedes Monday, is the sun's day. So would it not make
Yes.
sense that the next moon day is a day of reflection of what? Of the sun.
Of the sun. Yeah.
And
Of the
what
sun, the
happened
self.
what did the sun communicate to you on Sunday? What did you receive from the sun on Sunday that now you're reflecting on it on Monday, on the moon's day?
So I can see the pattern that you're talking about with each of the days. And if
Yes.
you don't know, the days of the week all are connected to a planet, and each hour, does it go through the 7 of them in one 24-hour cycle of the
Oh,
hourly ones, or
oh
is
yeah.
it
Well,
just
it does it
keep
and then it
repeating?
repeats it and it repeats
Okay.
it. Yeah, it just
What
keeps repeating.
I understand why they don't use the outer planets like Neptune,
Because they're
Uranus, Neptune, and
invisible.
Pluto. Oh, because they're invisible, so they're
They're
not visible to
invisible.
the naked eye.
That's
I
right.
knew that's why we didn't, but once we discovered them, I wondered why they never incorporated that into astro magic. You know?
Well, no, yeah, it's not a part of the visible world, because we're dealing with that which is visible, that which is physical and visible, not the invisible. And we
Right.
don't
So there is a.
there is an invisibility,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why Uranus is the sky god. Uranus, the word Uranus in the Bible is heaven. It is translated heaven. because it is that which is invisible. So we recognize that there is an invisible God. Okay. And we see it manifest in Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. So there's the recognition of the invisible God, but we
Right.
look at the visible gods as the seven, which they call the wandering stars, the sun and moon, and then the wandering stars. But
Right.
that's how
That's
we're
what
kind of
planet
looking at that.
means. The wandering star is like planet
Yep.
is the translation of wandering
Yep.
star. Yep.
Yep.
That's interesting. Wow. So you give me puts a few different things in my mind that I didn't have to kind of piece things together. So we talked about Hermeticism. We talked about astrological magic and how they intersect and how they are used together.
Well, at least
There's
a
an
little bit of
idea.
how they intersect.
At least
There's
a
way
little
more than
bit.
that. But.
Of course, we can't cover that in an hour-long podcast. We can only do so much. But what I'm curious about next, because I know that you are a Christian minister, would you still call yourself that, or no?
That's my upbringing. That's my education. Do I
Right.
consider myself a Christian minister? Yes, 100%. But like, am I? To be fair, would I consider myself a traditional Christian minister in today's world? Oh, no, not even close. No,
Right.
not in today's world, because okay, so taking from Christianity, there's very different Christianities, and there is
Yeah.
a Christianity that would have gone like the kind of practices that would have happened in the first 300 years of Christianity, and then over the years, there's just been a lot of changes, and
Right.
yeah. So
Like
do
different
I agree
branches
with
from
all
the
those?
same
Oh
tree.
my God! Like there's so many, and it's like
Yeah.
with over 30,000 different denominations,
Really? I didn't
all
know there was that many.
oh, there's more than 30,000, but
Wow.
yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
really didn't know that.
Oh, it's because everybody who gets their own twist on the Bible gets a new denomination and they start their own
Right.
thing. Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't know there were more different types of Catholics
Oh
either
my
until
Lord,
I
there's so
was
many. It's
in the early
crazy.
90s. I have my son, and I was with, my husband at the time. We were, he was Catholic, and they told me you have to be careful of these Catholics because they're not real Catholics. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is because I wasn't raised Catholic. I'm like, okay, so they don't kneel because, doing the sacraments and all
Yep.
that. And I'm like, I don't know this stuff, but, it was a lot.
It's yeah, it's interesting when, so like I would split. So there's in the variations of things. So if we take
Mhm,
Catholicism and we take what would be considered Protestantism,
mhm.
Catholicism is based in a tradition. So it follows a tradition. So to be Catholic means that you keep the traditions.
Right.
To be Protestant is a belief system. So it's set
Oh,
on beliefs.
did
So
not
you
know that.
hold these things to be true and you believe this.
I
Okay.
did not know that.
Yeah, and
Interesting.
so that's the difference when you look at that, and so then within the
Cool.
Protestant movement, the different denominations hold different
Beliefs.
things to be true,
Right.
okay? So, for example, if you're a Baptist, being water baptized into full immersion becomes paramount to your salvation
Hmm.
because they believe that. To
Right.
be a charismatic, you believe in the gifts of the Holy Spirit and in speaking in tongues. You believe, but if you're Methodist, you say that that died off with the early church. So, like, they all have these different beliefs and different, like, there's like a ton
Yeah.
of them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the charismatics are the ones I was warned against. The charismatic Catholics. They were like, oh no, they're the what? But they were very
Yeah.
traditional Catholics. That family, and bless them, I love
Well,
them.
and then
But
even within the Catholic Church, so with the traditions, then you have what traditions do you keep? So some will say you have to have Latin Mass. That has to be.
right.
Like, and it's not okay. So for me, it's not that all these different people don't have points. They actually do.
Right.
Okay. So, like 7-day Adventists, they're really big on you meet on Saturday, not Sunday. Well, that's because in the Jewish tradition, you met on the Sabbath, which is Saturday. And so they're like dead set on that. And then there's other traditions where people will talk about the cross, Oh my God. So it's either a T like this or where we see it come up like
Right,
that.
like a or a
Okay, so
crucifix.
like literally they fight over that. Like that's like how is that a major issue? But it is. Okay?
It's
Like
the belief system, right?
yes, so there's like baptism by sprinkling or baptism by immersion. Why? Well, because the word baptism in the Greek means immersion. The reason why they
Mm,
did not translate it is because in the Church of England, when that was going on, they believed in sprinkling. Okay, so that's how they did it. And so the translator didn't want to lose his head, so he just anglicized the Greek word. So baptismo, and they just baptism. They didn't translate it. They, so they just kept the
interesting.
word. Yeah. So, and the reason why sprinkling happened was there for several years, there had been a famine and a drought. Okay. So they didn't have all the water to baptize. So they began sprinkling during the drought. And then after the drought, they just continued the practice.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Very
So,
interesting.
yeah, when you get into the history, you kind of learn what happened, why it changed, but then people just lock into it and then you're going to hell if you don't do it this way.
Right.
So,
There's a lot of
do
fire and
I
brimstone with that.
do I practice all those things? No, I try not to like no. I don't know. That's not it.
Yeah.
I follow
It,
more of the mystic traditions within Christianity is what I would follow, but I do know these other things. So,
right. Well, you did go to school and get educated in that, so you do
yes.
understand it, but that doesn't mean you
Yeah.
have to incorporate it in your own self.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that brings me to another thought, another question is the idea of tradition. You mentioned not being sure which one to keep or which one to change back, and the idea of the sprinkling and the baptism by full immersion. You know, like who makes that judgment? You know what I mean? Is it the
Well,
person of the church or something like that, of
yeah,
that
okay, so
specific
it depends
denomination?
on so what happens so in Catholicism, of course, it's the Pope that's going to do that,
Right.
and that's done. Now, in so then you have other like you have larger groups, larger denominations such as the Methodist, Church of England, which these are Church of England is one step off of Catholicism. So it's what's considered a high church, more off traditions. And then, you'll deal with the Baptists and Methodist and Presbyterian and Pentecostals and Charismatics. Okay, so each of these break down to where when you get to the sort of the charismatic group, they're all very independent and individual. So like the local pastor becomes the one that's calling all the shots. At the denominational level, the denomination heads are the ones that ultimately call the shots. So they'll have a board and they'll have a sort of a conference for the denomination that makes these decisions. That they
I
come so
see.
it's more democratic in that way. Yeah.
I see.
Which is sort of
Okay.
ridiculous, but it's
It,
it's the nature of human grouping. It's what we do, you know.
and it's also what we had talked about within the idea of Hermeticism and even astro magic, in the sense of if we're doing it because it is a tradition or a law, if you will, or we're doing it because of the mystical side of it. I mean, I don't think and if you're thinking it from a mystic sense, the sprinkling or the immersion, does it really matter? I don't know. That's a question, but you know, I don't
So
know if
the
it really
one
does.
thing, so okay, so what I would say on that is it's a matter of understanding the purpose of tradition and how it intersects and what is its play in the idea of spirit. Okay, so because we are beings of not simply one nature. We are beings that are both spiritual and physical. Okay, and then we have this thing in between, what we call a soul, that has a certain physicality, although not completely physical, and a spirituality. Okay, so that's sort of important to understand. And if you deal with spirit, spirit is not under any law in that way. Okay, spirit is. It's not under any physical law, but our physicality is under a law. And so that's why the idea of traditions. So within astral magic, it's very law based, very tradition and law based, because we are physical beings. dealing in a physical universe. But the intent is not to achieve law. The intent is to engage spirit. But it's like if you go through these methods, it's the way that you enter in and engage spirit. That's what you do. Okay, so that's the concept. The intent is to bring you to spirit. And so we go through these physical practices because that's how we discipline our physicality, our bodies, to engage spirit. But too often, and where a lot of religions get lost, is that they will do the physical actions without without looking for spirit. They just will go through the actions. It's going through the motions without any. There's no ending. There's no intent. We're not being introduced into anything. It's like just go through the motion. It's like, okay, for what purpose? And so
Right.
you lose the significance. All right. So for example, baptism becomes a major thing. And so people will fight over immersed or sprinkled. And literally people have been killed over this. Okay.
Wow.
So, oh yes. Oh yes. So there is tons of stories of the there was a group. So there's always groups that are coming out of different Reformation periods. All right. And they were killed over the idea that they baptized their baby and didn't sprinkle them. Like they would murder the people for that because you're
Wow.
going against, for their mind, you're going against God's law. Therefore, you're a heretic and you need to be destroyed. Like we're not very far off of that time. Okay. There's some amazing stories of that. It's like here, this one of the guys, I used to have a picture in my office. It's a drawing of a prisoner that has escaped. So he believed in immersion. He escapes. His jailer is following him, falls through iced water, falls through the ice, is drowning. The prisoner comes back and saves his life. The jailer takes now the prisoner back to jail and kills him.
Oh, wow. He saved his life.
But he's still a heretic and needs to die.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Wow.
Yes. So, but the idea is, okay, what is the purpose of baptism? So, as above, so below. There's the physical act of baptism, but there is the spiritual act of baptism as well. So the physical act of baptism, the word baptism means to be immersed. It means to be totally drenched. But okay, who cares? Because what is the spiritual act? The spiritual act is also to be immersed in spirit. How are you immersed in spirit? Well, there's different ways in which you can do it. But if you take yourself and you gather around a group of people, let's say you gather around 6 people, and they're all around you, and what they speak to you is only what is spiritually true. So they will say, you are loving, you are honest, you are kind, you are wonderful, you're beautiful, you are perfect in every way. They will speak every spiritual truth to remind you this is what it means to be baptized in spirit. It means to be overflowing completely with spiritual truth, things that are real, not physical. But I'm going to speak spirit to spirit because I'm going to draw your spirit out, and I want you to be conscious of the truth of your spirit. You have nothing you can do to improve yourself. You are perfect. You will never be lost. You never were lost. You were never born, and you will never die. So you speak what is true of spirit.
And that's considered a baptism.
That's a baptism. You are being immersed in spirit.
Would they call that a baptism, or would they call it something else? Like
they wouldn't even call it anything.
They wouldn't. So
they won't call it anything.
I'm honestly wondering if I had an experience like that when I was young. I was so young that I I remember being in the church. I believe it might have been a Presbyterian church, so I don't know if that maybe negates the baptism part of it. But they had me accept Jesus into my heart, and it was the most beautiful experience that I could have had. Although I did get baptized in my adult life, my 20s, at a Catholic church, because I was never baptized because I wasn't in their way. But that experience of what I had in that church, and it could have been Presbyterian, I'm not 100% on that one, was a connection that I felt that gave me comfort and made me feel like I was part of something bigger than just the self, as much as I could have when I was young. You know, it's probably like 8 or 9 or 10 or something like that.
Yes.
When
that would
happened.
be a spiritual baptism.
Yeah.
So
it's like they said, inviting Jesus in your heart.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I remember having even an emotional reaction, but it was beautiful emotions. You know, it was like, oh, I teared up because it was so beautiful.
You are overwhelmed. You are, again, immersed. You are overwhelmed by spirit. Yeah.
That's so interesting. Wow. That's interesting, because I always thought I was never baptized until, you know, I got a little older. And
a lot of people have been baptized and don't even know it. Okay. So a lot of people, like anybody listening to this, that have had that experience, and a lot of people can go back to times when they felt something of being overwhelmed with, that's baptism. So the symbols of baptism, again, as above, so below. Okay, so yes, that's a faith statement. So when I would go and be baptized, that's a statement of my desire to be overwhelmed by spirit. That's all that is. So, but the key is you want to be overwhelmed by spirit. I could care less whether you were sprinkled or immersed. That doesn't matter. It's the intent of the heart of what do I really want. Now, if you want to get technical, it means immersion. Technically, but does it matter if you are sprinkled and then you get baptized in the spirit through the spiritual? That's all that matters. All that matters is that you're open to being overwhelmed by spirit. That's all. And when you do it physically, you are declaring to the gods and to everyone that this is what I desire. Okay? That's what you're declaring. And that's what's important. We make declarations. And this is the part of astral magic. You are doing something, you are declaring something. You're not just thinking it. You have to say it. You have to do it. You have to declare it. And it births something. It makes it real in the physical, tangible world.
Yeah. That was exactly where I was going with this. Is like, that makes sense for astral magic, in the sense of this is actually, you know, what you're doing in astral magic. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you're bringing that into concentrate into something, whether it's the self or an object like a talisman or something.
Yes, because we are all, in a sense, talisman. We are all objects of the universe. I mean, when we look at a chart, what we're looking at is the relationship of the universe at the moment of our birth, of a moment of our creation, which is really the same as a talisman. That's what you're doing. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. So it's like, what is this? What are you? Well, we look and we say, okay, it's a combination of these things. But there's something more, because as a human being, you also have the divine nature. You have spirit. Okay. So that makes it that's a different thing. It is the uncreated, where a talisman is a created being that is, it is that moment of creation, you've embodied the energy, you've embodied the truth of that moment into that thing you've created. You've embodied a truth. Okay. There's something real and it's tangible that you can hold it. Okay. And it reminds you, it's like constantly there. It not only reminds you, it reminds the other angelic beings, it reminds those that are aware of it, of what it stands for. You know? And so that's why there are, you know, there are so many messages in the air. Okay. I mean, here we are, we're speaking on this thing. And this will go out over the internet, and it's a message. And I will tell you right now, there are spirits within this message. There are spirits within every message. Okay. So what is it communicating? What is it doing? And it's like, okay, here we are. Well, we're on a Monday. What do I hope this does? I obviously this will have an element of reflection. That's what it will do because it's
Yeah,
being done on Monday. Okay.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's that is part. I don't care what day it's played, it's going to have an element of Monday in it. That's what it will always have because this is the day it's created. This is the day it took
Interesting.
form, physical form. It's
Right.
not when it became a thought, it's when it took physical form. So this is, and what you're doing is you're acknowledging that's what is. Okay. I'm acknowledging that's what is, and I am participating in it. I'm developing a relationship with it. All right. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So, oh, that's so interesting. So this leads me to another question here.
Mm.
Um, Divination. What role does practicing divination play into Hermeticism and Astro Magic? Is it really divination or is it more intention?
Well, okay. So divination goes way back. I mean, you see it in
Right.
the Old Testament in what was called the Urim and the Thummim. So the high priest would wear this necklace, and on it, it had a Urim and a Thummim. And it would ask a question, and then it would pull the stone, or it would pull whatever it was to answer the question. So I think there's with divination. I think with anything, I would say this, that there can be an improper use of it and proper use of it. That's just the nature of things. How I use divination, you're trying to divine, you're trying to find what is God's way to go, to divine. You want to know what is the proper way to go. And if you take and you use, let's say, tarot is a very popular divination tool. What I look at for tarot and how to use it is giving you another perspective on the situation you're looking at. On the question you're asking, it's giving you a different perspective. So you have your mental perspective, but you're wanting to do what's right. You're wanting to, like, what do I really need to do here? So I ask that question. I'm asking the question, okay. And the cards are pulled up. And what it does is it allows you to see have you considered this question from this point of view? And sometimes all it takes is I now consider it, and the answer is obvious. All right,
Right.
because it's giving me look at it from this point of view. If we think it's telling us what to do, we're no, because we are divine beings. It cannot dictate the spirit. Nothing physical can dictate to spirit. All right, you have to
Mm-hmm.
make your own choice and your own will. What it's doing is anything that might be blocking your view or might be in the way, you're saying, I want to know the truth. Okay. And then you approach it from a different angle. Now, I will say this, if you have a tarot card reader okay, we might have a problem with that because now you are dealing with somebody's will and you're trying to overcome their will. And no, you might think that you don't want to do. No, I'm telling you, you have to do this. Now I have a real problem with that. Nope,
So
nope,
you
nope, nope,
skipped
nope.
out for a second
Uh,
there. You were saying if you have a tarot card reader, and then it skipped out for a second. Was it if you have a tarot
okay,
card
so
reader
with a tarot
telling you
card
what to
reader,
do?
like when yes, you never want anybody telling you what to do.
I agree with
You
that
always
completely.
have free will.
Yeah.
And so when someone is, like they can say, hey, this is what I'm seeing. These are things. What do you think? How is like, is this seem right to you? Have you considered it from this way? This is kind of where we're looking. That's what divination to me is more about is
Right.
to, like, we're looking for you to
Give
find the
perspective.
answer, but you need to find the answer.
Right.
That's the thing. A person needs to find their own answer. And
Yeah.
so again, people use the Bible for divination all the time.
Yeah.
They don't call it that, but that's exactly
No,
what
they
they're
call
doing.
it bibliomancy. Where you open it up and just read a
Yes.
paragraph of it or something.
Yes. And can it work? So there's the idea of seeking and finding. If you're really
Yeah.
seeking the answer, you could, like, my God, you can do almost anything. If you're really seeking the answer, then the answer wants to come to you. Okay? So it wants to come. That's the nature of God. If you seek God, you will find God. It's not if you seek him, I'm never going to find him. And what that means is if I'm seeking the divine will, then I will find the divine will. It's not being hidden from me, but it wants to be sought out. It's not just going to be shoved in my face. It wants to be sought out. Okay? So divination is a tool. Now, in the church, they would get rid of it for two reasons. Sometimes it was being abused because there were charlatans who were doing it and controlling people through it. Okay? Which we know that happens today.
Yeah, it does.
Another factor was the minister wanted to be the one dictating everything, and he didn't want people finding their own answers. So that's another
Mhm.
side of it, which
Like a bit of
that also
control.
happens equally as much. So, but can it be used and used properly? Absolutely. Like, people will want to quote scriptures that talk about, oh, it says not to. Well, there's a lot of things the Bible says not to do, but typically when it's doing that, it means don't do it improperly. Like, there are proper means in which you can do things, and then there are improper, and don't do it. Like, don't do the improper. So yeah.
Interesting. Could you give an example of what a proper thing would be as opposed to an improper way of doing something?
Yeah.
Is there
Okay.
something
So
in your
let's say
mind?
someone comes and is asking, I'm wondering if I should move. Here I am in Jacksonville. I wonder if I should move to Chicago or not. That's a consideration to take this job. Okay. So they come. Let's say I take the cards. I do the cards. We're flipping the things. We're looking, and it's saying, the potential for moving, or it's even talking about moving, a new start, a new this. So you say that. And then they may ask, well, does that mean I should move? Well, what do you think? All right. What do you think? And if they're like, well, I think I should move. Well, then that sounds good to me. Okay. So you're not wanting to say, if they say, hey, should I move to Chicago? Oh, absolutely. I'm seeing you should move.
Yeah, that's a control
No.
thing there, right?
Yes. You
It's like,
never want to cross a person's will.
right,
Okay.
right.
So you always give them free will, where that if you say, well, based on the cards, yeah, you need to go, you're already now challenging their will. And
Yeah,
that's an improper way of doing that. You don't want to
yeah.
do that. So,
I've had clients specifically ask me, what should I do? And I'm like, that's
yeah,
not for me to answer you. I'm
it's
here
not.
to show you what I see. And then you make your decisions, because that's not
Yep.
for me to do. And anybody that would, it just kind of stay away from them, because they're probably
Yep.
not steering you in the right direction.
Well,
And
whether they're
that
steering you in the right direction or not,
or
it's
not, it has to come from
improper
you. It is
because
improper. Yeah.
because we all have the divine life inside of us, and it's that
Yeah.
life we need to live from. So if I'm saying I'm going to give you the answer, I'm denying them going to the source. All
Right.
right. And I don't want to do that. They need to find
No.
it within themselves. Now, as ministers or as people helping, it's our role to clear away anything that might be hindering them. So we clear away blind spots. That's it. Okay. That's all you want to do, is clear that away so they can see and make a decision, whatever that decision may be. I don't, do I care whether they go? I don't care. Go where you want to go. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're seeking to know in a sense, the divine will. Like, okay, is the river flowing that way? Is that the way I need? Is that where I'm going to stay afloat? Okay, let's
Right.
find out. So you
Right.
can do that. You can look at the chart. That's another way. You can do horary. There's so many different ways you can do it. You can freaking flip the Bible open if you want. If you're seeking, you will find. And so that's just, again, that's one of the Hermetic principles of if it's going out, it's come back. Okay. Like that's the way the world works. So that's
Yeah,
the way life
that
works.
is the way the world works. And I think if you're seeking, maybe there's a nudge to you that you might not be aware of to seek something, whether that's what you want to see or not. But yeah, I definitely think that's a thing too.
Well, yeah, and the cards can really twist around and really like flip your point of view pretty big time sometimes. Like I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't thought of that. Oh,
Oh
it'll just
yeah.
give you considerations that I hadn't even thought about that. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that and it should bring clarity. What I usually ask with any client is it's not that you can't have some fear. Like any change is going to give you, but do you sense beyond the fear? Do you sense an excitement and a peace? And if you sense an excitement or a peace and a peace ultimately, then do it. Even if there's a little fear, it's okay. You want to find the peace. But if you can find no peace in it, don't do it.
Hmm.
Don't. If you can find no peace, if they're still trying to work through, these are just like things for me. Like again, you can definitely have fear because you're doing something new. But beyond that, there should be an element of peace. You should be able to find that. So I don't know.
Yeah. So you've started your journey. I mean, everybody starts their journey with whatever path that they're taking. We start in one level, one leg, if you will, and then sometimes bleed into many, or we stay on that same one. We might be Catholics our whole entire life, born,
Mm-hmm.
raised, and all that. What um, what kind of thing would you tell someone that is interested in Hermeticism or astro magic or something like that? Even Christianity from the sense of a spiritual connection to God. What would you tell them would be wise to kind of start their journey with that? So someone that maybe just didn't, have that upbringing, what would you say to them?
Oh, what specifically is the question though? Like how to start or where would I start? Or
Well, what
if
advice or guidance would you give them for someone starting their journey into Hermeticism or astro magic?
so if they were starting their journey into Hermeticism, of course, there's some of the basic books out there. It kind of depends on what they're coming from. So, you
That's
know,
true too. Yeah.
most people have a particular language that
Hmm.
they have used. You can either say a religious or a spiritual language that they have. Okay, so obviously in this country, you're going to get a lot of Christians. Like there's even if they're not like really deep into it, they're still quite familiar with it.
That's where we
Hermeticism is
work.
going to be easy for most Christians because really the Apostle Paul, who wrote the vast majority of the New Testament, deals with a lot of Hermetic principles. Okay, so that's most of the principles are not unfamiliar. And I think most people
Mm.
would see when reading the seven that are there, that's not, there's nothing that would have been said there that's like, oh my God, the Bible doesn't. No, it goes for all those things. That's easy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, um, and I recommend always with really good teachers. Like I mean, the class like we're both in with Christopher Warnock, who's
Hmm.
very good at.
Yeah.
Highly recommend his class that I am taking. So he's fantastic. He's fantastic in this way. One, he knows his stuff. Two, he keeps with the traditions. So for me, whenever you're learning a new tradition,
You want to stick
don't
with
try
it.
to adapt it like right away. Don't try to make it like something it's not. You kind of have to learn the tradition and then you can move your changing from there. And this is something he says, this is something that I for myself believe that if you're going to learn a tradition, learn the tradition, then shift it up. So a lot of new age type things don't like the tradition. They like to shift it up right away.
Yeah. It's like
I
a
do not,
hodgepodge
because then you
sometimes.
don't actually learn it. You don't
Right.
really learn it. And if you don't, you have to do it in the way it's done. Even if you think, oh, that seems ridiculous. Nope. You do it that way. When you're learning and you're a student, you do what the teacher says. That's the way you learn, because you can think it's dumb until you do it. And then you see, oh, I see why. Okay. That has happened to me plenty of times. And so you've got to like just do it. So again, with any tradition, follow it to like, again, not to break your will or not to cross like where you feel, oh, that's wrong. Okay, that's a different story. You don't ever want to do that. But if you just think, well, that's ridiculous, do it anyways. Because there's a lot of things within the astro magic that seems ridiculous when you're dressing in these different things and these different colors. It's like, what does that matter? It does. Okay, it does.
You're invoking
No,
the angels, right? So
you
you're
are. Well,
bringing that
it's a
about.
message. It's a vibration. It's a message.
Right.
Everything
Yeah.
you do is a message. Yeah.
Right.
That's what you're doing. And so you want to get in line with the message that you're trying to say. Okay.
So finding a traditional teacher, one that
Oh,
resonates with you.
absolutely.
And
Absolutely. Again, being a heavy Virgo person, of course I'm going to want to go to a master and learn from a master. That's what I like.
I have
Now,
no
other
Virgo
people
in
are
me, but
more,
I'm the same way.
yeah.
Like
So
I don't
it's
have any
like,
planets in Virgo.
I need that. But books, I mean, I enjoy books and books will get you to a certain point, but it's
Right.
nothing like having an actual teacher is way better. So you're obviously going to read a lot. You need to be able to read a lot. But like there's some things that's really hard to get around. That man, if you had a teacher, that would have could have cut months off, of trying to learn because I missed that or I didn't know that or I didn't know that's what you were
Right.
supposed to do.
They fill in
So
the little blanks for you where you get the book and it
absolutely,
maybe doesn't have the entirety of it, but the teacher you can say, hey, blah, blah, blah. And I don't understand
absolutely.
where this connects. And then you
So
understand.
yeah, so
It
I
helps you
highly
become a master.
absolutely. So far for me, everything in my life that I've done, I've had a teacher for. So there's been someone who's really instructed, and they basically lay a lot of the foundational stuff. Now you go on from there and you'll learn your own stuff. You'll do your own
Right.
thing, and that's fine. But you do want someone to lay a good foundation. And so there's certain things I look for in a teacher. Um, and I'm like kind of picky that way. They
And what are
cannot just
they?
go to the normal path. Okay, so for some reason, I just like the normal path. That's not my path. Like, I'd rather have someone who's a little unique and has really mastered their thing, and they're
Right.
not just in it for making big bucks. They're not. I don't care what they make, but that's not their intent. Like they do it for the passion, the call, the love. That's why they do it, and it's evident. And so I've been very fortunate that way to have some really good teachers that were able to, again, lay a foundation in certain things and teach. And you're not going to be there forever. And again, if you're younger, you're going to grow beyond these things. And this is probably not the end all be all, but it's maybe where you need to go and to step to the next thing. So
Right.
there's been a lot of things I've done that right now, like I look back and I used to, that was so top notch and everything was great. Now I'm like, that was child's play. Okay. But I had to go through it because you can't get to where you are without going through those things, you
Right.
know?
Everything leads into one. Your moment in the moment
Absolutely.
is the amalgamation of everything that has come before to create this
Yep.
moment right now.
Yes.
I think that's an
100%.
important part of it. And I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's important to find someone who's not just teaching from a book because they read a book
Oh,
and they
no.
learned it that way and they're just regurgitating the book. You need someone who actually knows what they're doing and they're able to.
Absolutely. So, for example, um, there is a podcast that I love listening to, and it has a lot on Hermeticism, and it's with
Oh,
Dr. Sledge. He's Jewish, um, and it's oh what? Wait a minute, let me look. So it's a really good podcast, but he is not a practitioner. Okay, so he's more of an academic, but he's good. He's got a good sense of humor, and he'll introduce you to books. But he's not on the level of, let's say, a Christopher Warnock who practices. So, he can't give you the nitty gritty, but he does introduce you to a lot of books, which are really good. And he does some great books. So he's a very good academic, and academics can lead you to books. That's what they do.
Yeah,
Because that's
what
what
they
they
do.
are.
Because that's what they
But
regurgitate.
if you want to be a practitioner, then you need to kind of go to you need to have a practitioner. Okay. You need to have someone who's doing it, not just who is a theorist who has read about it. Let's see.
Yeah, I think
Esoterica.
that's
Esoterica
important.
is the name of the podcast.
Oh, I didn't know they had. I knew that. I didn't know they had a podcast. I'm gonna look them up. And Dr. Sledge is the host of the podcast.
Yeah. Esoterica. Yeah, he's like one of my favorite as far as within that realm, and he does quite a bit on Dr. Justin Sledge at Esoterica, but he'll do a lot of astro magic and the Kabbalah and all the things, and Hermeticism and all that. He'll deal with all of the realm of Esoterica, which, I mean, I like that whole sphere of sort of the ancient spiritual life and the mystic life.
Right.
And again, I've been introduced to that kind of thing by different people, all the way from within Christianity to sort of where I am now, which is it's kind of a Jesus belief, but so because Christianity has so much tied to Rome, and it twisted a lot of the original sort of teachings of Jesus and made them very just tradition and sort of like the form of it, but not emphasizing the reality of it, to the spiritual side of it. But you will find a lot of Catholic mystics who did that. They were wonderful. They actually practiced it. And the Catholic mystics are the ones that I read a lot of, and that led into this kind of lifestyle, that it led into a life that is about following the spirit, following the voice of the divine within you, which in the scriptures is referred to as the word of God. So the word of God, which is what the Gospel of John starts off with, and it's the word of God that resides within you, that you're to have faith in, that you're believe in, and you're to walk in. And so it's through these mystic traditions. And to tell you the truth, it doesn't matter the mystic tradition, whether it's a Buddhist mystic tradition, whether it's a Sufi mystic tradition, whether it's Catholic mysticism, whether there's only one Protestant mysticism, and it was the Foursquare Church was originally started as a Christian mystic by a Christian mystic. Yeah. It's the only Protestant one that actually has a mystic tradition that they kind of deny now, but it's there. He was a mystic. Even the Mormon, Joseph Smith had a lot of mystic sort of, he had a mysticism within the faith there. It sort of got washed out by Brigham Young. He got rid of that. But Joseph Smith had some of that. But you'll find within all of these traditions, they all say the same thing. So whether it be Kabbalah or anything, they all go to that inner voice, that still small voice. And they want you to seek out that and live from that life, live from that voice.
Yeah, and listen to that still small voice, which is the word of God.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting. So I didn't know some of these things that you were telling me about in terms of mysticism and understanding, where the mysticism comes into play in this. And so what was this is going to be my last question to you, but I'm curious, was there a defining moment, or was it just like a combination of defining moments when you realized that there was a connection between the Christian teachings and, esoterica, Hermeticism, astrology even, or was that something you always knew?
No, it was not something I always knew.
Right.
Oh, hell no.
Exactly. Because I was kind of like, in my Catholic family, they were like, oh, I mean, they called me a witch. I'm not a witch, but they called me a witch because they thought I was studying evil things. So it took a while for me to understand the two, but I knew there was more than what I was taught in the learning,
So
really teaching
probably the
themselves.
thing that was, there wasn't obviously one point. There was a gradual sort of like slide and then massive fall into it. But it started off with the whole idea is I wanted to be able to live the Christian life. So that's what I wanted to do. And so when I got married, um, I wanted to do it seriously. Like I wanted to live the Christian life. What we all talked about.
The
And
devotion, yeah.
yes, and that isn't done. Like you can go to all the Pentecostal and all the basically Protestant churches and the like, good luck, man, not happening. Like you come on Sunday, you come out, like they have all these, they can make it busy for you. But it's like, okay, how do I get to this state of perfection? Paul talks about that we wait for perfect. How do I get there? How do I work it to where I can be like Jesus? Isn't that what we're supposed to be trying to be like? Is like Jesus? How do I get there? Oh, good luck, man. They won't give you any answers on that. So even though I'd been to school, was a minute, like all these things, you're like, okay, how do you do this? Yeah, no, they don't. So it's like, it became like, church became like a business, which really pissed me off. And
Mm-hmm.
so I began to search. And again, if you seek, you will find. And
Yes.
I search and then I get these books dropped in my lap, which are like, okay, um, these different basically Catholic mystics that are seeking God, and seeking union with the divine. And I'm like, well, union with the divine, that sounds good to me. Let's try this. And that began a meditative practice, which moved me away from a theological practice, which is basically a
Mm,
theological practice is a practice of the mind. I thought that if I just understood the Bible enough and got my beliefs right, that was going to do it. It didn't. It did squat. Okay.
right.
But then the mystic, the meditative, sort of the what they would call centering prayer practice, there was some I had some real encounters with spirit, okay, with that was beyond just my ability to think, but it was touching something and it made me hungry for that. And then began a massive pursuit into that through the Christian sphere, which eventually came to an end because they just had no further to go. And then I left that and then I began to look for other spheres that did the same thing, that would delve you into these experiences that were beyond body, that were into the realm of spirit. And so that's been going on over the past 20 plus years. Well, over the past, really, it's been almost 30 years now, into these realms, and willing to do a lot of different things. And well, let's see. I'll always try, you know, but it has to be effective. It has to affect my life in a positive way. And then I go back to my, again, sort of my theology on that, where the fruit of the spirit. So if you're delving in and if you're being saturated in spirit, you should possess love, joy, peace, long suffering, gentleness, goodness, meekness, faith. Okay. This is what it should manifest. And if I find with it, oh, well, I am able to handle things better. I am able to be more loving. I am able to be more patient or kind or these things. Okay. Well, that gives me something to measure against. Okay. To say, are these things effective? Because I think if a practice isn't effective, then why do it? And, in this spiritual path, I've run across a lot of people, and some people, like, they like the high. They'll do the thing for the woo woo, the feeling, but then it doesn't affect their life. Like their life is the same as it was. And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I don't want to do that. It like, uh, you know, I should I should be able to have a life that is honorable and something that, oh, okay, people will look and yeah, okay, wow. Oh, he's been married for, 35, 36 years. Okay, that's something. Oh, he has 8 kids and oh, they're all doing well and they all love their parents. Okay, well, that should be good, like
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, and and he has a business. Oh, and he has a good reputation in his business. Oh, well, that's good. Is he well thought of in the community? Is he this? Is he that? Okay, well, there's this, and people like that, and people like, okay, well, there you go. Like to me, it's like, okay, um, are things well spoken of you? does this happen? Does that happen? So it's like, is it affecting your life? Is there things and change that you can see? So then for me, it works. And are there things I've done that I no longer do in the sense of practices? Yes, because you sort of grow and you change with different practices, and you find like, oh, this is effective. I'm going to do this now, because my brain will wrap around it, and then it becomes ineffective because it just becomes a mental practice, and then it dies. You have to engage different things. So you learn and you flow with the ebb and the tide, and you learn how to do that. That's what you do. And then you meet these people, and they're a big part of your life, and then you go away from them because they're no longer a big part of your life.
Right.
It's
Right.
and it's not that, oh, we failed. Nope, you didn't fail.
No, it's just that
It needed to be then, and now it doesn't. Now we're going in slightly different ways because we both are following, in a sense, the word of God that's leading us, like not walking the exact same way. And that's fine. That used to, when I was younger, that bothered me like crazy.
Me too. But I've come to understand that on a different level as I've gotten older.
You just realize,
because it's like, oh no, I'm losing a friend, but no, you're actually opening a door to something else, and able to focus on you. And it does happen. It's just like and it's not like losing a friend, like you don't, have an argument per se, but you just drift, in different ways.
Yeah, you're
so,
going you're
totally
being directed in a different place, and okay, So there was a book that one of my teachers had written, and it was called Climb the Highest Mountain. And that's very much for me, a lot of the things. It's like, in climbing the highest mountain, there's a lot of places where you can camp, and you could just, that's it. Like, you got this high, good enough, base camp, like, good. You got that high, you could just camp there, and you can be with the people and all that, and you can camp there. But there's something that's like, I want to get to the top. I want it, like, but it's a lot of work, and it gets lonelier and lonelier and lonelier,
less
as you
people.
go. And, and when I want to get to the top, that I'm not talking about the top. I'm talking about the top that I can achieve in maybe my lifetime.
Right.
Which,
The
am I
top for
coming
you.
back? I'm coming back. This is not my last go around. I'm nowhere close to being in my last go around. But it's like, okay, I want to achieve, and I want my soul to learn the lessons that it needs to learn this time. Because then, for me, it's my kind of thought or belief that once your soul learns the lesson, it never has to learn it again. So when I come back and I'm re-embodied, I don't have to learn that lesson again. I've already learned it.
I like that.
So it's like, all the lessons I learned, they're not wasted. Oh, if I don't achieve the end, then they're wasted. No, we're on a long journey, and it takes several lifetimes. Okay, that, again, these would be my thoughts. It takes several lifetimes, and I don't want to waste a life where, oh yeah, you learned one lesson in this lifetime. Okay, that's okay. At least you learned one. Or, well, you learned half a lesson. I'd rather learn as many as I can in this lifetime, so that it just makes it better for the next life.
Right.
And so I'm not wasting anything. I'm not wasting the short time we have in these skin suits. Okay, I'm not wasting it. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. I could be wrong. That's very possible. But if I'm wrong, I probably don't think it's hurting me. Think so.
No. Right. You're enriching something within yourself, at least, bare minimum.
Yeah, it's like, well, I have a purpose. I have something I'm trying to do, something I'm trying to accomplish. So, okay. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But, it's at least my thought. And right now I'm sticking with it. So
that's a good thought, though. I like that. Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing this insight and wisdom that you have with us. I hope that our viewers do like it. And next week, I hope we can start talking about some of the things that we're going to be doing for the next VA conference, because we're going to have a meeting tomorrow to talk about that. So, thank you, Christopher. And thank you, everybody that made it this far. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
All right. Awesome.